Hello everyone, myself Rishabh Raj, belonging from Gaya Bihar, and I am the negotiator of Team Kasturba Gandhi.
Hello everyone, myself Rinku Kumar Bhairo and I am from Malur, Rajasthan.
Hello everyone, I am Geeta Mepung and I am from Itanagar, Arunachal Pradesh.
Hello everyone, myself Akansha Sinha from Raipur, Chhattisgarh.
Hello everyone, myself Aman Kumar Meena. I am from Soy Madhupur, Rajasthan.
Today we are going to present a video on the topic that is a well-educated mind versus a well-formed mind. So I am here to talk to you about Indian education, higher education in particular. But I am actually going to start with demography. How many of you here are under 35? Okay, that seems pretty representative of the country. 65% of India is under 35. How many of you are under 25? Then you are not representative because half of the Indian population is pretty much under 25. We are an amazingly young country. In fact, if you just take the age group from 10 to 19, there are 226 million Indians poised, in other words, to enter higher education, going through school and ready for higher education. This is amazing because it's happening at the time when the rest of the world is aging. If you look at the average age in India today, it's 25. Of course, don't ask about the gap. Since we heard about gaps between the average age of the Indian person and the Indian cabinet, I think we hold the world record for that. But that's another TED talk, right? But what you have got with the average ages at a time when the rest of the world is changing as that by 2020, the average age in Japan is going to be 47. In China, it's going to be heading well past 40. Europe 46, the United States, beautiful US also 40. And India's average age is going to be 29. So we are potentially the people who are youthful, productive, dynamic, young population, ready to work and transform the world. The kinds of role that say China played in the last generation could be ours in the next. In fact, international level organization has worked out that by 2020, we will have 160 million people in the age group of starting work 20 to 24 and what they calculate. And China will only have 94 million at the same time. So we are poised to do that. And by the way, other countries will have a serious deficit. That's estimated that the US will have 17 million short in terms of how many people, the need of working age. We in India have the people, but do we have the ability to equip the people to take advantage of this, to be the workforce of the work engine for the world? See, if we get it right, we educate and train them. We really transform not just our own economy and our society, but the world. If we get it wrong, the demographic dividend that I am talking about becomes a demographic disaster. Because we have already seen in 165 of our 625 districts what happens when unemployed, frustrated, undereducated young man become prey to the blandishments of the moist and prey to the gun and the bullet. So education in our country is not just a social or economic issue. It's even a national security issue. We have got to equip our people to take advantage of what the 21st century offers them. This is the story of a nutshell. 4 is expansion with our first priority in education. So why? Because the British, and I would not even ask if any of you are here, left us in 1947 with a 16% literacy rate. There were only 4 lakh students in the entire country in higher education. We had 26 universities, fewer than 700 colleges. So obviously, expansion was essential. We have gone right from that 16% to 74% literacy today. We have gone from 26 universities to 650 universities. We have gone from those 4 lakh students to 20 million students in higher education today. And we have 35,000 colleges as well instead of 700 colleges we had then. So expansion has taken place. We have also had to fight for the second E of equity. That is including that excluded from the education, trying to reach out to the unreached, the people who didn't get a fair shake in education for reason they could not help. Gender and obvious reason. When we had that 16% literacy, do you know what that female literacy rate was? It was 8.9% at the time of independence. Just 1 out of 11 Indian women could read and write. Caste, religion, reason, all sorts people got left out of system. We had to bring them in, and that became a big challenge and a priority for education. In getting those two things more or less right, I don't know how well we did on the third E, which is the E for excellence. Obviously, you need quality. And that we said about setting up institutions of great quality in our country. The IITs are a good example. In fact, it's a part of Jawaharlal Nehru's vision that IIT in Kharagpur was established in 1956, the year I was born, and it was done on the site of a British detention center, the Hisley Detention Center. So, a symbol of political oppression became instead a symbol of hope, of technology, of looking into the future. But for the IITs, the IIMs, a few good institutions. I am sure you could all pick your few around the country. These have tended to be island of excellence, floating on the sea of mediocrity. The average Indian higher education institution is simply not of the quality that you and I, all of us, as this audience would like to see. And that ties into the fourth E I have added to the cartesian. Talk to employers, talk to CEOs. What would they tell you? That they are simply not satisfied with the quality of the graduates they are getting. Even in the T of TED, the technological area, engineering graduates, 500,000 engineering graduates a year. But if you talk to the Federation, Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, they did a survey and 64% of employers are not satisfied with the quality of graduates they are getting. Some companies are running essentially re-education places like the gigantic campus in Mysore, and it's not on the job training, which big companies tend to do. In fact, a full year's education for the people they have already hired to make up for the deficiencies of what they have learned or not properly learned in the college. Now that's the scale of the challenge that we face. What are we doing about it? A great deal needs to be done. Of course, we are trying to put in kids into the system at an early age. The RT, the Right to Education Act.
If kids were out of the school in the old days, it was the parents' fault. Today, if they are out of school, it's a state's fault. The government is committed to actually getting them an education. We've got more and more money being pumped in by the system at all levels. For example, many of you may have gone to prestigious universities. Lots of people in India don't. They go to state universities, which are grossly underfinanced. We have come up with a scheme to pump central money into the state universities so they actually have the resource to do something with the students they have there. Money isn't the whole answer. There is entire challenge in terms of addressing things like the gender gap. That's a gap. But despite what Mr. or what an earlier speaker said, we don't want to embrace right that we must overcome. Right now, women's literacy is 66%, better than 8.9. But it still means that one out of every three Indian women still can't read and write. We have to overcome that. And we need to cage the ones who have been left out of the net. Adult literacy, huge challenge. I went off to the village in Tamil Nadu, not far from Khan Gibran, but I've met women who in their 50s and 60s were learning to read and write. And people think sometimes, what's the point? Some of their own family members, their husband, think, what's the point? The answer is, it changes their lives. It empowers them in real ways. I spoke to a woman called Chitramani who proudly wrote her name in Tamil on a piece of paper. I said, so what does being able to read and write mean to you? And she said, now I can see the destination of a bus, where it's going. I don't need to ask somebody where that bus is going. I know where I can go. When I get to the big city of Gandhipuram, I can read the street signs. I can find where I need to go. I don't feel helpless anymore. That kind of empowerment is what literacy gives people in a very fundamental and real way. And we're trying to do that, of course. For those who have dropped out early on in the days before we got that 74%, younger kids, we've got them in school now. We have something called a gross enrollment ratio, the percentage of children of a certain age of the appropriate one for a particular level of education. But at our primary school now, our gross enrollment ratio is 160%. We've actually enrolled more kids than we thought existed that age group because some of the older ones are coming in too. Bad news is, as you go up the level, it's starting dropping. So by the 8th grade, I'm afraid it's down to 69%. By the 10th grade, 39%. And by college, our gross enrollment ratio is about 18% against the global average of 29%. So clearly, we still need to do more. Our expansion hasn't gone enough. We haven't managed to get everyone to stay in the system. Some of them actually need vocational training. They're not all going to become white collar clerks or officials or IAS officers, right? We need to try and cage them and got them into vocational training. But how do you do that in a culture where for 3000 years, if you wanted to become a cobbler or a carpenter, you'd better have an uncle or father who is a cobbler or a carpenter because nobody else is going to teach you. The transmission of knowledge of trade craft in our country has always been through the gene pool, the reason why the sons of politicians tend to be politicians also. You know, and with the Bollywood movie stars, same story. Laughter, so we need to get master craftsmen. Why is it with a country of 1.2 billion that we should have a national wide shortage of masons, of plumbers, of certified electricians? We need to get more vocational training into the system. With doing that, we're now rolling out the whole concept of community colleges so that kids can go in, have some academic learning, loads of vocational training, and at the end of 2 years, if they show tremendous academic promise, they can go back to a university. And they go off and do a useful trade in a society that is clamoring for these skills. So these are the kinds of changes that we are trying to bring about and move along. But there's a change that the government alone can't do. You know, if you look at the need for research and innovation, we have heard a lot of that. I'm sure in the course of TED Talks, research in something which the government wants to double the amount of money they are spending on research for 1% to GDP to 2%. We haven't had the money to pump into it yet. But innovation requires new ways of thinking. I heard you had a talk about hyperthinking. I've missed it, but new ways of thinking means learning to think out of the box, learning to create. I know we are famous of Jugaad, right? If you Google the word frugal innovation and top 20 hits will all relate to Indian invention. We invented the world's cheapest electrocardiogram, the simplest and cheapest EKG, the cheapest insulin injection, the world's cheapest small car, the Tata Nano, but all these have been things invented elsewhere that we have stripped down, made more affordable, more replicable, more relevant to our conditions. We need to do things that others haven't done before, which we used to do in our culture, where Nalanda invented the zero. Remember how the Romans used to write their numerals in long strings of letters, till an Indian thought of the idea of zero emerging from the notion of sunyata in Hindu and Buddhist thinking that came into the zero sunya, which transfer global mathematics. We need to think like that again. We need to come up with the ideas with 17% of the world's brand. Why do we only have 2.8% of world's research output? Coming out of the country, well, perhaps we need to start in the classroom. Get our kids not just to have their heads filled full of facts and textbook materials and teachers' lectures.
I have actually had a little experience of out of the box thinking myself. I wear glasses, I do not need them to read or to see your folks on the front. But if I want to catch somebody in the back row, there I have to look through glasses. But because I hardly ever wear them, I keep losing or breaking them. I shove them in the pocket, bang them against the wall or something, they crack. I put them on the lap. When I get up, they fall down. Somebody, month of this year, I lost or broke 6 pair of glasses. So I was telling a friend about this and he said a simple solution. Why can't you think of one? I said, look, there is no easy solution because of 150 years. Glasses have been made in one way, right? The joint together at the center. Then hang over your ears. That's what I have found. An inconvenience, so I take off. And he said, no, 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 no. You will find a different way. You can reimagine glasses in the way. They are not going to hang over your ears or join at the middle. And this is what he did. I am wearing them right now. And if I want to see anybody at the back, I just pull them together. It was have two magnets in the middle that click together, and I can see you all the back. Applause. Note. Now, it is just a silly example, perhaps, but it is an example. Or how one can you think out of the box, things, familiar objects can be thrown in the ways they have not been thrown of before. And that way we can forward in the world. I have no doubt. That's the challenge are enormous. There is simply no solution. That's all. In our country, we have become literate, but there one piece of good news: 95% of 12-year-olds across Indians can read the right, so the future looks good. And has so far the workforce in concerned, if we can get all these another pieces in place, we can say to the rest of the world, understanding the difference and the synergy. In our increasingly complex and interconnected world, the concept of a well-educated mind and a well-formed mind have never been more relevant or more understood. Their two notions, while sometimes conflicted, represent fundamentally distinct approach to human development. A well-educated mind refers to an individual who has acquired a significant breadth and depth of knowledge, has been trained in critical thinking, and it is proficient in logical reasoning and academic inquiry. A well formed mind, on the other hand, encompasses qualities such as emotional intelligence, ethical judgment, wisdom, and the ability to apply knowledge in morally and socially consecutive ways. This essay explored the difference and intersection between these two forms of mental development, arguing that while each has its own unique strength, it is their integration that produces the most capable and impactful individuals. The journey towards a well educated mind typically begins in the formal education setting. From early childhood throughout higher education, students are taught to read, write, calculate, analyze, and interpret. The goal of this training is to cultivate a mind that can navigate the world or ideas with precision and clarity. In sense, education equips individuals with the tools to acquire and evaluate information, make resonant argument, and engage with complex texts and concepts. The liberal art tradition, for instance, emphasizes critical thinking, hobbitical skills, and the exploration of cat work, literature, philosophy, and science. A well educated person, therefore, is someone who can discuss, share speaker, explain scientific principle, understand historical context, and engage in thoughtful debate. However, the well educated mind, though powerful, it is not sufficient on its own. History is replete with examples of individuals who, despite with intellectual prowess, made ethically questionable decisions or failed to act with compassion and wisdom. This is where the concept of a well-formed mind becomes essential. A well-formed mind is shaped not only by formed educational but also by life experience, personal reflection, mentorship, and engagement with moral and existence questions. It is involved the cultivation of virtues such as empathy, integrity, humanity, and resilience. These qualities are not typically taught as standard curricula but are critical or navigating the complexities of human relationship and social challenges. Philosophers are educators throughout history as recognized the importance of forming the mind, not just the educating it. And to solve the example distinguishes between intellectual virtues and moral virtues, arguing that's true philosophizing requires the development of both. Similarly, confusion that's thoughts place a strong emphasis on moral development. Family duty and self-cultivation is more recent times.
The synergy between a well-educated mind and a well-formed mind is where the highest potential for human development lies. When the intellectual capability is matched by moral clarity and emotion intelligence, Individuals are not only better equipped to solve complex problems but also more likely to do so in ways that are ethical, inclusive all humans. The integration is especially crucial is in leadership role, where decision can have far-reaching consequence. Leader with both well-educated and well-formed minds are more likely to do inspire to foster collaboration and drive positive change. Throughout history, some of the most influential figures have exemplified this integration. Thinkers like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, and Roosevelt combined intellectual insight with deep moral conviction and empathy. Their ability to articulate powerful ideas was matched by commitment to justice, compassion, and service. They serve a models of what is possible when educated mind and formation are until in a single individual. Cultivation both a well educated and a well formed mind is not only a personal endeavor but also a social imperative. In a world facing challenges, climate change, political polarization, technological disruption, and social inequality, we need individuals who can think critically and act ethically. We need scientifically who consider business leader who prioritize sustainability and equality, educators who nurture the whole child, and citizens who are informed and empathize participants in democracy. To move toward this ideal, we must reimagine our educational system and culture norms. School and universities should broaden their mission to include the formation of character alongside the transmission of knowledge. Curricula should be interdisciplinary: philosophy, ethics, psychology, and the arts, alongside science and technology. Assessment methods should value creativity, collaboration, and ethic reasoning. In addition to academics programs, at the same time, familiar communities and institutions must take active role in fostering environmental who young people can grow in both intellect and character. In conclusion, the distinction between a well educated mind and a well formed mind is not merely academic, it has found implication for how we lead and contribute to society. A well educated mind provides the tools for understanding and navigation the world, while a well formed mind ensures that these tools are used wisely and ethically. The most impactful individuals are those who possess both, who can think deeply and act compassionate, who are both knowledgeable and wise. Uh, as we look to the future, our challenger and opportunities lies in cultivation mind that are not only filled with information but also guided by integrity, empathy, and purpose. This integration is foundation of true education and the key to building a more just, human, and flourishing world.
It reflects two fundamentally different approaches to learning: personal development and the cultivation of human potential. A well educated mind is often the product of formal instruction, typically, typically marked by the acquisition of knowledge, facts, dates, and theories that structure curricular and systematic study. Such a mind may demonstrate professionally in multiple disciplines the ability to recall vast information and the competence to succeed in examinations or earn degrees. It is by many conventional standards the ideal of product of modern education system, which prioritize standardized testing, measurable outcomes, and the subject-specific expertise. However, a well-formed mind transcends this framework by embodying not only intellectual uh, rigor but also critical thinking, moral reasoning, emotional intelligence, and the capacity to apply knowledge wisely in the varied and unpredictable real world context. While education fills the mind, formation, formation shapes it, formation shapes it, structuring the inner faculties to think independently, judge fairly, feel deeply, and act with the integrity. A well-formed mind seeks understanding over memorization, perspective over opinion, synthesis over division, and the wisdom over knowledge. It is structured through reflection, dialogue, life experience, and the continuous refinement of character. In contrast to the information uh, centered model of education, formed engages the whole person, intellect, emotional will, and spirit, fostering not just what one knows, but how one thinks and who one becomes. It encourages learners to the question assumptions, wrestle with the ambiguity, and embrace the discomfort that offers accompanies real growth. While a well-educated mind might excel in debate, a well-formed mind excels in discernment. One may know how to win an argument, the other understands when it is wise not to argue at all. The former may achieve success, the latter strives for significance. Moreover, the well formed mind is increasingly vital in the world where information is abundant but wisdom is scarce, where technology accelerates changes but rarely teaches patience or virtue. In such a world, we must ask it enough to know, or must we also know how to live? The well formed mind answers this question by integrating knowledge with ethics, empathy, and self awareness, becoming not only a vessel of facts but a steward of understanding. It is in the light of the tension, the harmony between education and formation between most illuminating. They are not only enemies but partners, ideally complementing one another. For knowledge without formation can lead to arrogance, while formation without knowledge can lead to naivety. The most impactful individuals in history were philosophers, statesmen, reformers, visionaries did not merely possess educated minds, they embodied well-formed ones. They combined intellect with insight, skill with service, reason with virtue. Thus, in the nurturing future generation, the true goals should not merely be educated minds, but to form them, to shape the human minds, capable not only of solving problems, but of asking better questions, or building not just successful lives, but meaningful ones. It is not the number of books read that defines a person, but the depth to which those books have been internalized, challenged, and applied. And so, while the well-educated mind may know the world, the well-formed mind helps to shape it. This distinction between even more critic, crit, the distinction between even more critical when, becomes even more critical when we consider the evolving demands of the 21st century. A world not merely driven by knowledge, but increasingly shaped by the ability to think across disciplines, discipline across culture, and adapt across changing context. In such an environment, the limitations of a merely well-educated mind begins to reveal themselves. A person may be able to analyze data, construct logical arguments, or recite complex theories, but without the grounding influence of a well-formed mind, their knowledge risks become sterile or even destructive when divulged with compassion and responsibility. In conclusion, a well-educated mind may open door to opportunity. A well-formed mind ensures that those opportunities are pursued with wisdom and purpose. The two should not be seen as opposite but as complementary. The future depends not only on how much we know but on how wisely we use what we know.